Hey, this is Jason Falls.
Hey, this is Mari Smith.
Hey everybody, this is CC Chapman.
Hey, this is Jason Keith.
Michael Stelzner here.
Hi there, I'm Rand Fishkin.
Hey, this is John Jantsch.
Hey, it's Jay Bear.
Hey, this is Brian Solis.
Hi, this is David Wells, and you're watching Inbound Now with... Hi, this is Seth Godin, and you're watching Inbound Now with David Wells.
Welcome to another episode of Inbound Now. I'm joined here with a very special guest today, Mr. Jess Bachman. Jess is a graphic designer and creative director at Visually, and he specializes in infographic and viral content creation. Welcome to the show, Jess.
Great. How you doing?
I'm glad to get you on here. I really like the stuff that you do with your infographics. You've created tons and tons over the years, and I really wanted to pick your brain on what are some of the best practices, what to think about when companies are trying to create infographics and stuff around that. So let's dive into it. So Jess is the creator of the very, very popular infographic Death and Taxes, which I'm sure you've sold tons and tons of posters. It's got tons of traction. And he's also created a number of infographics for Mint.com, which in my opinion, I think Mint.com was one of those companies that actually kind of pioneered the infographic as kind of a marketing tool. Would you agree?
Yeah, they saw the value of it early on and really, doubled and tripled down on that strategy for sure.
With the infographics that you've designed, how do you go about picking what the subject matter is, and can any data kind of be made sexy with design?
Well, it's not really about the data. It's about finding the angle or the story to what you're doing. Like one of my most popular ones I did was on HDMI cables and how they were overpriced. And if you tell someone that, it doesn't seem like that it would be that viral, but it just hit on a pain point that I guess a lot of people had. And there wasn't a lot of data associated with that, but I just sort of told the story and showed how much monster cables cost versus other stuff and how ridiculous it was, and it totally blew up. So you gotta try and find pain points that people have and something that's really going to resonate. It's hard to go out there and look for a data set and be like, this is what I'm going to work with. You try to have a story in mind or, find the right angle on something.
So yeah, and there's a ton of infographics out there today. It seems like it's been replicated across the web. Do you think the kind of infographic market is becoming oversaturated?
Hell yeah, it's becoming oversaturated. I mean, you can get them now for $100 from people in India doing them. So, the market is getting out of control. But on the high end, you can also, there are, Fortune 500 companies want them now because, they've worked so well. So while there's a lot of people doing them, the best content and the best strategies for promoting them will always rise to the top. And it's anytime something's oversaturated, it's definitely an opportunity for the best people doing it to succeed.
With your infographics, you've been featured over, I think it was 50 times on Dig's homepage. They get a ton of traction all over the web. What's the method to that madness? What's your kind of promotion strategy when you actually, finish the infographic and kind of push it out there?
Well, the Dig strategy, when I was doing that, was from 2008 to 2010 or something, and Dig has certainly gone downhill in terms of what it can provide. And when we were doing that, I'd love to say that it was the content alone, but really it's about, power users and gaming the system or whatever, just making it work. But the bottom line is it's not going to work without content that people want to see. You can't game up something that sucks, period. So you kind of have to have both arms there.
How long does it typically take for you to create an infographic from kind of start to finish?
Well, when I'm working with a client, a lot of times it depends on the client, and they can be really difficult or really easy. It's funny, the best clients are the SEO-driven ones who they want results. They don't really care about the design or pushing pixels around here. They want results. And, that's great for me because I can certainly provide results. But, the shortest I've done is probably 4 hours after Instagram was purchased. A great tactic is to do something that's topical. If you can't do something that's really great, the shortcut is to do something topical, and people will just want to feature topical information regardless, and they'll make discounts on the design based on that. But we did something on Instagram, put it out in 4 hours, and it went everywhere. Of course I did it, so it was good content to begin with. But yeah, but they can take a week to 2 weeks depending on how complicated it is.
So you mentioned the clients that are focused really on the SEO side of things. What are some things that companies that are paying for an infographic to be created or creating it in-house? What are some things that they can do to kind of maximize the, I guess, link potential of that infographic?
Well, the topical stuff is good. Hitting pain points. Like a lot of times, there's a lot of financial companies. I do stuff for Mint, but also I did a lot of freelance and a lot of stuff for Aaron Wall at SEO Book too. And so you'll get companies who are like have something to do with credit cards or whatever, and people don't want to be pitched credit cards. But if you sort of turn it around and be like, credit card debt sucks or credit card companies suck or something, then you're going to get a lot more people to, link to that, to share that, because they hate that kind of stuff. And that stuff does real well on Reddit as well, who, those type of communities are very, conscious of being gamed. And, that's really difficult to do there as averse to Dig. So you want to take sort of the anti-corporate angle or, that type of thing. That works really well.
So with Dig dying, is it mostly, pushing things towards Reddit and like Pinterest and stuff like that? Or, I mean, do you have a specific channel you kind of target in the social bookmarking realm?
I mean, we try not to rely on stuff like Reddit, because even if you do something awesome and you think it's perfect for the Reddit community, it may do nothing. And that's just kind of, how it works on Reddit. Or you may, put it out and then someone caps it, puts it on a different image site, and then that does really well. So it's really hard. So what we do now, since we've built such a strong network with bloggers, other sort of sites like that, we're able to sort of push that to them. And because we're providing, a constant stream of high quality content, they're more receptive to that, because, they get requests. I from my own blog, I get requests, 10 to 20 a week for people saying, here's my infographic or whatever. But because we've got a name of doing really great stuff, then we're more receptible and we built relationships. So that's kind of like the foundation of our promotional strategy now.
So for businesses that are like trying to get into the infographic game, trying to create that awesome piece of I would say advanced content, where should they start? Should they go and hire a designer, or can you explain to me a little bit more about what Visually is, visual.ly, and how that might be able to help businesses?
Sure. Well, we're trying to tackle the market in a few different ways. We have our site where you can upload infographics, and we'll feature them, and that's a great way to get exposure. And then we also, we're building a product where people can sort of create infographics. That's in various beta stages. But we also have, a marketplace, and we have clients that come to us who are looking for infographics. And, we have designers, we have editors, we have contacts. So we certainly provide, the full service there to do that.
So let's switch gears a little bit, branching off from infographics more into the broader design space. So we're both a member of the This Week in Startups back channel, which is an awesome show and an awesome back channel. You learn all kinds of cool stuff, and you just see a lot of cool conversations happen there. But one of the things you've been doing recently in there is doing website design audits. So can you kind of walk through the process? Like when someone contacts you and says, hey Jess, can you take a look at my website and kind of give me your feedback? What are typical things that you look for?
Well, in my own experience, I've run my own businesses. I've had to do my own marketing and my own sales and all that stuff. So I'm a designer, but I do have a background in sales, which a lot of designers don't have. So it seems kind of incongruous to go to a designer and have them design a website when your website is like a salesman. It's just like hiring a salesman based on how it looks. It doesn't really make sense. It needs to perform, and it really needs to tap into the customer, and you need to direct them to do what they want to do. So I have a lot of opinions about what's good and bad in website design, and I sort of apply those opinions to my design audits, and I don't know, it's really fun, and it's honing my skill in order to do that as well. I'm learning a lot
with the design. A lot of companies, they'll like you said, try to get a website that just looks visually stunning, and it is, but it's not converting. So what are some typical things that like overly designed sites are missing?
I think there's a general sort of myth that the best practice is to get your call to action, front and center and make it big and red and make sure someone can't miss it. And,
Right.
you try and get the user to click it as soon as possible. But when they're clicking that call to action, they're basically skipping the sales process and you're dumping them into your ask, whether it's form or credit card or whatever. And I don't know why you'd want to skip the sales process, because that's where you sell the user. So generally what I, advise people to do, especially if it's, B2B where, it's more than, just an email address or something, is to have, a lengthy sales process, even if it's, 2 pages or something, and put the call to action down near the bottom below the fold where the interested people are, and rather than getting a whole bunch of clicks to, something and then people bounce right out of that because you haven't sold them yet.
So you're saying like basically like a buy now button isn't going to perform as well. You really want that informational kind of sales content. Have you done anything with like content offers, like, download this free guide of, whatever it may be, as kind of a secondary call to action for people that aren't ready to click that buy now button?
No, I haven't really looked at any of that. I'd love to audit a site that has that, so I can take a deeper probe.
Yeah, Inbound Now has that stuff all over the place. I designed it myself too, so be gentle. But
okay, I can take a look for sure. But I always try and put myself in the frame of mind of the visitor. A lot of people design their sites and they think that the visitor gets there and that's where they want to be and they're really excited to be there or whatever. But really, you're going to have half their attention at best, and then they have, their Gmail notifiers going off, and they haven't eaten, they missed lunch or whatever, and you really have to distill it down to like bullet points to get their attention. You can't like start immediately putting a whole bunch of sales copy or all this other stuff that distracts them or whatever, because they're not going to be in an optimal state of mind to, or at least what you think they are, to get into that process.
So do you do like A/B testing on the design stuff that you do, or you just have applied the best practices you learned throughout the kind of years there?
I don't do A/B testing, but I suggest for the people that do design on it, I seriously suggest doing a lot of A/B testing, because it's like with infographics, you're putting something on Reddit, you really don't know what works. You think something will and it won't. A lot of that applies to design as well.
Where do you go online right now to kind of keep tabs on what's happening in the design and UX community?
That's funny, because I try and tend to go nowhere, really. I try and keep a lot of the influence stuff out of my brain, and try to sort of let my brain sort of cultivate what I think is best. I have mentors and stuff that I consult with, like Seth Godin and some other people who I believe in and try and emulate some of the stuff that they do. But I really try not to participate in design communities, or it's just sort of my philosophy. I was not trained in design. I did not go to school for design or marketing or anything like that. I've learned what I've been doing by doing it, and by being successful at it. So just continuing what works.
So on that point, and I totally agree with you, I think a lot of business owners, a lot of marketers are like afraid to learn Photoshop or something. It's really not that hard, right? I mean, there's free tutorials online, everywhere, and it's as long as you just buckle down and do it, it's not terribly difficult, right?
Right, and even if you hire a designer, it depends where you hire them, but they may be marginally better at Photoshop than you, and you're paying them. So it might work to invest in yourself a little bit and get some basic skills going so you can touch stuff up, or get something going.
So Jess, where can people find you online?
You can go to buyjess.net, or you can Google Jess Bachman. I'm all over the place.
Nice. Yeah, I saw your appearance on the Martha Stewart show.
Yeah, that was a weird one. I was a little out of place there.
That was an interesting interview, but cool. Yeah, I appreciate your time. Thanks for coming on the show. I definitely learned a ton about infographics, and I'm gonna throw my hat into the ring and say I'm gonna create one. I don't know what it's gonna be about yet.
Well, I mean, find something that you're interesting. A lot of the ideas I get, like I'll go to the store and I'm like, oh, that's ridiculous, or that sucks, or something, and infographic doesn't have to be really large or blown out. It can be something really sort of small, as long as it it strikes a core with people.
Thanks for your time, and yeah, appreciate you coming on the show.
Great. Thank you, David.
Awesome.